Alyssa, you were friends with Cassidy Hutchinson. Let me just ask right now, you've talked to her. How's she doing?
She's doing remarkably well, I think better than I would have been doing in her shoes. I think she's struck by the magnitude of the moment, but she went into it clear-eyed, knowing obviously her life would change overnight, but that this was incredibly important testimony she had to bring to the committee. So, I mean, Cassidy actually came to me and said, there's more I want to share with the committee. A couple months ago, I put her in touch with Congresswoman Cheney. She got a new lawyer, and that's how this testimony came about. And one thing I want to say just real quick on Pat Cipollone, I think he's a gold mine, even if he can't talk about what he advised the president on. Even just confirming that he told the White House chief of staff, you'll have committed every crime under the book. So there's a lot that could come out of that written testimony.
Can I just follow up on one thing? She came to you and said she had more even after she'd spoken to them once? She came to you and said she had more even after she'd spoken to them once? She came to you and said she had more even after she'd spoken to them once?
Yeah, so what people need to understand is Trump World was assigning lawyers to a lot of these staffers who themselves, don't have big...
Assigning lawyers?
Well, I should say covering the cost of lawyers for people who don't have big legal defense funds to themselves.
So they were paying Cassidy Hutchinson's lawyer?
Is my understanding. You'd have to confirm that, but she had someone, Stephan Positano, who'd been in the White House counsel's office, is still aligned with Trump World. She did her interview. She complied with the committee. She shared with me, there is more I want to share that was not asked in those settings. How do we do this? She shared with me, there is more I want to share that was not asked in those settings. How do we do this? And in that process, she got a new attorney of her own. Congresswoman Cheney had a sense of what questions needed to be asked that weren't previously. So that's how this shocking testimony that people didn't realize before kind of came about, and it didn't come up in her earlier interviews, some of these facts. And in that process, she got a new attorney of her own. Congresswoman Cheney had a sense of what questions needed to be asked that weren't previously. So that's how this shocking testimony that people didn't realize before kind of came about, and it didn't come up in her earlier interviews, some of these facts.
Well, good to be with you.
We begin with more details about the former president's behavior on January 6th. Two Secret Service sources have just confirmed to CNN that Donald Trump did angrily demand to be taken to the U.S. Capitol as rioters, may I say armed rioters, approached Capitol Hill, and he berated his protective detail when he did not get his way.
So this is significant because it corroborates some of the testimony from Cassidy Hutchinson on Tuesday, which Trump and his allies have been trying to discredit.
The president reached up towards the front of the vehicle to grab at the steering wheel. Mr. Engel grabbed his arm, said, "Sir, you need to take your hand off the steering wheel. We're going back to the West Wing. We're not going to the Capitol." Mr. Trump then used his free hand to lunge towards Bobby Engel. And when Mr. Renato had recounted this story to me, he had motioned towards his clavicles.
All right, let's start with the new reporting. CNN congressional correspondent Ryan Nobles has it. What are you learning?
Yeah, that's right, Victor. This comes from two different sources within the Secret Service who spoke to our Noah Gray, who said that this story of the former president being irate and demanding to be taken to the Capitol on the day of January 6th was something that was spread around the Secret Service in the weeks, months, and days after what happened on January 6th. Some recounting this story as early as February. And the two different sources have stories that are very similar to the one that Cassidy Hutchinson testified to in the hearing on Tuesday, saying that the president was mad and that he lunged toward the steering wheel in an effort to try and get the detail to take him to Capitol Hill. And what's also important is that that second source that we spoke to said that they had heard the story directly from the driver of the presidential Suburban that Trump was in on that day. Now, both of these sources never said that the stories that they heard indicated that there was any type of physical altercation or that the president himself ever was able to grab hold of the steering wheel. It's important to point out that Hutchinson never makes that direct claim either, just saying that he was lunging in that direction. But what it does more than anything is it corroborates the most important part of this story, that the president was angry and that he was demanding that he be taken to the Capitol, where he had already encouraged a group of rioters who he knew were armed to go to the Capitol and be a part of that. And that's the thing that the committee is most concerned about. It's also important to point out, Victor and Allison, that when the Secret Service has pushed back on that testimony, when they've refuted parts of it, they've never disputed the idea that Trump was mad and that he wanted to go back to the Capitol. Of course, the other aspect of this is that the Secret Service has said that Tony Ornato and Bobby Engel, the two agents in question involved in this, are willing to come back and testify under oath. So far, we don't know if those depositions have been scheduled.
She came to you and said she had more even after she'd spoken to them once. She came to you and said she had more even after she'd spoken to them once.
She shared with me, there is more I want to share that was not asked in those settings. How do we do this? She shared with me, there is more I want to share that was not asked in those settings. How do we do this?
So